Hi guys, Tyrnek here with another Studies in Salt. I tried to record this a couple of days ago, but it turns out my audio fucked up, so hopefully this time it'll be a lot better. Anyway, first things first, I promised a couple of games versus EssMussEin that I played a while ago now. And there isn't really going to be too much to say about this. EssMussEin was playing Commonwealth, starting bottom side of Helen, some very small place, while I was playing Eastern Bloc, top side. You'll not really much to say about this game. I pretty much blunder away my entire opener, and from there, pretty much just surrender and then move right on to the next game. So yeah, from here, I should not have tried to push all my stuff through the smoke. It just was open to both the Challenger 2 side shots and just getting killed by the Highlanders there. So really bad positioning on my part. He also pushed a bunch of his stuff into through golf, and yeah, from that point it's just like, yeah, there's no real point. Alright, the first game. And second game, there's actually more to bite into there, so we can talk more about that once I find the damn game. There we go. So 1v1 Plunging Valley, same decks, I believe. I start the bad side of Plunging Valley. Well, EssMussEin gets the favored side. So the reason that this side, the side that I start on, is considered the less favored side is because of this forest. If the enemy gets into this forest, they basically have control of Foxtrot and Delta. They're able to get a pincer into Delta and even start cutting off this reinforcement road, which is the main reinforcement road that most units path to try and get into Delta. And you also lose control of Foxtrot, because once you have this, you can cut off any reinforcements heading to Foxtrot as well, unless they take the long way around. And then it's relatively easy to like take this town and then start pushing into this bottom sector here. So anyway, EssMussEin, a little bit of background on him. He's a Chinese player and he's one of Faust's friends. He often does 1v1s with Faust, so despite his Colonel tag, he's actually one of the. He is a pretty good player, all things considered. Alright, so game is starting. My intention is to try and execute Faust's preferred strategy from this side, which is to push into Foxtrot and push them out this way, and then start going across this way. I believe that this is mainly done to counter a push right into here, because this position is so important for this side to win. But in a moment, you'll notice actually that I make a very big mistake in the sense that I separate my tanks and my infantry from each other. So my intention was to take this area, but I was not able to get my tanks engaging his Mexuses, which meant that everything I had over here was basically unable to achieve its objective and kind of just get isolated over here. So in this case, I basically kind of fuck up. I get a panic bomber, which is a terrible idea. It doesn't even get the Vickers, which is just like, ugh. And then yeah, I start to have to defend against a push in the middle as well. I don't go into Bravo at all because I was mainly worried about this forest area. So generally, if you pause for a second, if you don't intend to try and push into Bravo and contest it, typically what happens is that you, at the most, put like a recon infantry squad here, and then like maybe like an ATGM squad here or something like that, just to make sure that anything that tries to move down into this area is at least delayed for a little while. There's no real reason to try and push things up ahead here into here if you cannot hold on to it. So yeah, it was pretty much primarily just me not being able to use my own tanks to check his Mexuses in order to support my infantry to push into here. And you'll see his Vickers basically just kind of bullies everything I have in the area. I don't have anything. I don't have like any kind of tank or whatever that can really contest it. So right now it's just mopping up everything I have there. I'm forced to pull back and wait until I can find someone to deal it, either by sneaking around or getting a tank. And I think these LSTR eventually get the Vickers. But as you notice, in the center area, he's pushed through, and now I'm in a really bad spot because he can go down this way. Since he wasn't able to go that way, he can come down this way, and now my entire flank is exposed. My Moderna is in danger. All this stuff is here. So I need to start rapidly trying to redirect, what shoots in and stuff into this area to try and deal with that stuff. But eventually, one of these Highlanders, I believe, gets to gets my Moderna. So yeah, right now what's happened is he has a bit of a salient. I'm basically trying to defend here, but I make a mistake in trying to focus too much in here and not getting any heavy sort of fire support, any tanks here, which basically allows him to get down into here for free, and that's bad. It might have been better to have my Moderna or something around here or here. That way, you'd be able to instead of just focusing on this port, we'd be able to counter the stuff going down this way more easily. Yeah, at this point, he just has a lot more material on the field because I have been trading extremely unfavorably, mainly because my fire support was disconnected from my infantry screen. So yeah, at this point, it's not looking so great for me. This push over here is going to get destroyed by the fact that I don't really have anything heavier than the APCs to back up most of the commandos. And like EssMussEin is a player that's good enough to micro his stuff. And I concede at the end because he has a Charlie too, and my Moderna got sideshot at the end there. And he was basically going to drive me out of that crescent forest, I call it, completely. And once that has happened, there's pretty much nothing I can do to get back in. So I just surrendered at that point. All right, moving right along. This is an interesting one. I believe this was a ranked match submitted by Jarec versus New Duck, who's a private. Now, you may notice that this is a 7-minute 40 match. And you'll see why in just a second. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, this is a hero rush. So this is actually a good replay that was sent in, just because I get to talk a little bit about hero rushes and how to deal with them. So, as you can see, Jarec having a relatively standard opening. I disagree with the T72M. This is kind of a light open, especially if he's planning to push the 2-pointer, but otherwise fairly solid. Similar idea here. Like, his opener's not terrible. That's the main thing. Of course, his enemy is healer rushing. TY90s, MI25s, AGS 17s. You know, this what you see is what you get. So, there's a couple of aspects to this. Let's watch this from Jarec's perspective. So from here, his MI2 is one reason why opening up. One of the many reasons why opening up with a recon helicopter is very, very useful. It allows you to scout stuff like this better than other sorts of recon units can. Because like now he knows, oh, okay, I'm getting healer rushed. And so in this case, he actually is able to respond appropriately. Instead of trying to keep pushing along this route, which he knows will just get his entire column destroyed, he redirects his units into this deep cover area and tries to set them up to intercept as much as he possibly can. And another thing he's doing is he's calling out these cheap 10-point trucks in big stacks. Now, why is he doing that? Why isn't he buying like Sopels or AKMs or something like that? Well, that's because expensive anti-aircraft pieces like that, 45 points a pop or so, they actually aren't going to do very well versus any kind of healer rush. And the reason for that is because due to rocket pods and just the way they work, you want to have more guns, you want to have more units that you want to have a lot of cheap spammy units than a few really high-end units, because even if the high-end piece like kills 1 or 2 helicopters, eventually one of the other helicopters is going to get in, stun lock it with rockets, and then the AA piece is useless and it's going to get killed, right? Now, if you have just hordes and hordes of these cheap rocket trucks, one, their base accuracy is kind of bad anyway, so it doesn't really matter if if their accuracy goes down. 2, their autocannon damage is really useful for sort of close range things. And I believe these guys suffer less from angle of cannon too high than other ones, just because their range is so much shorter than in general. And typically, you want to call these out as like a reaction buy to like put around your CV. And due to that, oftentimes the helicopters will be trying to get in really, really deep to try and kill the CV. But again, you want to have more because this way, yeah, they might have only like 1 armor or so, but the way that helicopter rockets work is that they almost always like use up an entire salvo or like half a salvo at the very least to kill certain things. And the more that you can spread out the potential damage across more units, the better. Because in this case, like this quad, this shouldn't really be quad stacked. It should be split into like individual units. But if you had, say, like an MI-17, this whole quad stack is 40 points, right? And in the best case scenario, the MI-17 uses up 2 of its salvos on 2 separate trucks, and then the other 2 trucks can hopefully kill it. Whereas if he had gotten a Sopel, the MI-17 might have just killed the Sopel in the first salvo, and then it has 10 more rockets to kill something else. So in terms of the math and how that particular thing works, that's an important thing to keep in mind. Like, this is why cheap base defense, like cheap spammy base defense vehicles, are so useful. They're one of the best things to call out in response to a healer rush. So this is a correct move. Another move he's doing is that as soon as he realizes what's going on, he takes all of his units that he can and he starts fast moving it down to the enemy spawn. This is generally because when people healer rush, this is an all-in sort of strategy. So they very rarely have anything beyond token defenses in their spawn zone. And even if they do have something significantly more than that, typically a full half of an opener or something will be enough to at least deal with it, or like at least cause a thorn on the enemy side and force their micro to be diverted other places. Because generally speaking, people who healer rush are pretty bad at the game. If they were actually good at the game, they wouldn't really healer rush that much. So it's very easy to out micro such players if you can, if you're good at like splitting your attention very quickly. And just one thing to note, this player is actually terrible at healer rushing. It's generally like poor healer rushers, they always have their helicopters clustered closely together like this. This is bad because if like a missile hit this, it would splash all these other helicopters, which obviously makes it easier for the defending player. Unfortunately, competent healer rushers will have basically all the helicopters in a line, so it'll make it tougher for you to deal with them as effectively. Yeah, so as you can see, like the Sopels are getting caught out, but these cheap little trucks, they're actually doing a really good job at stunning and absorbing salvos, better than you might think. And again, one more thing I actually didn't mention. Versus enemy healer rushes, the important thing is actually not necessarily to kill the helicopters. The important thing to do first is to panic and stun them, because a stunned helicopter is almost invariably a dead helicopter. And to that extent, if you look at the gun stats, you'll notice that these little guys, they actually have 110 suppression versus the Sopel's 92 on the main gun. Yeah, the Grom has 160 suppression, but here's the thing. All units in the game, they panic at 300 suppression. This is basically this is universal for every unit, right? Which means that if you manage to land 3 hits with one of these guys, helicopter is stunned. And if you have 4 of them shooting at like the same target, your odds of getting at least 3 hits is actually very, very high. Versus a single target trying to shoot at stuff. I mean, yeah, if you hit 2 Groms, yeah, it'll get stunned. But the problem is it doesn't apply that morale damage fast enough. And oftentimes the sort of alpha suppression can be the difference between killing the Mi-25 and losing all your AA pieces. So yeah, you can see that how these little 10-point trucks is actually really, really saving Jarec in this situation. And I guess one more final bonus is that if you'll notice, there's actually a veteran one in here. Like if one of these things shoot down an expensive helicopter, it just vets up really quickly. So that's just kind of a nice little bonus. But yeah, now you can see he's redirecting all of the rest of his units in to try and kill the stuff at Delta. And now he's actually moving the rest of his stuff to move to Delta as well. Yep. And one more minor note. He turned off the guns on his command infantry. This is because units always have a lower stealth value if they open fire. If you keep the guns off, the unit will not fire, which means that they can hide from the enemy rush better. And another reason why the enemy rush was really, really bad was because it didn't have any recon helicopters, which meant that everything that he sent over there had like bad, poor optics. And they would not have been able to see these command infantry unless they were literally right on top of them. It gave more space for the cheap bags to work. Let's speed this up. Yeah, from here, Conquer's in a good spot, basically spawn trapping this guy. And now it's over. Alright. So yeah, credit. Good job, Jarec, and shame on this private. Oh man, though I guess I feel a little bit sorry for him. He has played 250 games, and he's still a private. That's I guess some people have not seen the light of the boot camp yet. Tis a pity for sure. Anyway, so now let's go on to a slightly longer game. Let's actually cover something that I haven't covered on this series yet, and that is a 2v2. So let me give a little lecture on the dynamics of 2v2s. So for newer players, a lot of players like to get into big team games, right? Like 10v10s or something like that, where it's like their individual contribution is basically less less important than in smaller game modes or stuff like that. So they feel less pressure to that they're going to like fuck up something horribly and cause their team to fail, right? And that's applicable for 10v10s to like 5v5s, right? Maybe even 4v4s, honestly. But when you get into smaller games like 3v3s and 2v2s, these kinds of team games, they actually become a lot more difficult than simple 1v1s, simply because you have to know everything that 1v1s teach you, but you also now have to account for the fact that there are two players on the field. And when you have more than one player in a game, you open yourself up to double pushing. Now, what is double pushing? Well, quite simply, it's when two players attack along basically at the same time in the same area. What this means is that basically one player, if there's one defending player and two attacking players, the attacking side has automatically essentially double the resources available to attack than the defending player has. And this can be very, very bad for the defending player if they do not realize it and do not notify their ally that this is currently occurring. Because there is no deck in the game good enough to withstand a sustained double push from two players who know what they're doing. Now, obviously, if the two players are double pushing but they have absolutely no fucking clue what they're doing, then yeah, you can just like bomb the shit out of it or just pick off whatever. Easy, it's basically just free kills. But versus two competent opponents who are like smoking their super heavies, screening their infantry, all that stuff, it's impossible. Like there's basically the only thing the defending player can do is buy time. And at that point, it's for the defending player, it's like, okay, it's a matter of you're going to have to give up the ground. You just have to make sure that when you give up the ground, you don't lose everything you have. Like you don't lose whatever super heavies or A's or whatever other important assets you have. So this is why the 2v2, for like 4v4 meta, is often about identifying where on the map you are going to double push. And typically, what winds up happening on a lot of the metas for like 3v3s and 4v4 maps is that one player or two players defend while two players focus on double pushing one zone. And then it kind of becomes like a two-pointer race or something like that. But anyway, 2v2s. Very much still applies in 2v2s. And 2v2s also tend to really, really stress your micromanagement and multitasking abilities, basically because one player oftentimes has to split their attention across the entire map. Because as you noticed, this is a 2v2 map, and there are 3 quote-unquote lanes. By the way, this is the proper way to set up games, is to have one more lane than there is players. This actually forces you to actually think about where you're going to distribute your forces and how, and all that other juicy tactical stuff, and just brainlessly like, okay, one player goes here, one player goes here, one player goes here, or if you're smarter about it, half a player goes here, and like one player, like half a player goes here, and then like all three players like push into hotel and like drive people out, right? But yeah, it's all about double pushing and communication. Like, okay, we are going to double push here, or I need this unit, or I swear to God, I'm getting double pushed. If you don't do something, I'm going to lose, and it's all your fault. Um, because I've said this before, but I might as well say it while I have your attention. If your ally is getting double pushed and nothing is happening on your side, and you do nothing about it, your ally is not the reason the game was lost. You are, because you did not properly react to your opponent's cries for help. Now, if your opponent's double push your ally and your ally starts screaming at you to fucking get off your ass and do something, what can you do and what should you not do, right? Okay, so let's go over really basically the first thing you should not do. The first thing what you should not do is send air power or like AA or spam artillery or whatever like that. See, like that's nice. All this stuff is nice, right? The problem is that does not make up for a lack of ground units. Because here's the thing: if your ally is getting double pushed, what is happening is that his frontline ground units are rapidly disappearing. And remember what I said about air power and how it's a force multiplier? If there is no force on the ground to multiply, the contribution of that unit, even if it's like the most perfect bombing strike possible, is effectively zero, because you have nothing to follow up on that success. All you really have done is delay the enemy. And if you don't follow up with ground forces to try and really quickly reinforce your ally and try and push back that assault, guess what? Your shit was basically wasted. Like, sure, you may have gotten a nice KD and like a nice kill list to post on the Reddit or something, but let's be honest, you achieved nothing of value, okay? Similar thing with spamming helicopters, similar thing with spamming artillery. And some people like when I know several cases where I've asked for help and all I've sent were just like spags and radar area pieces that are not microed, and it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? I want ground forces, you fucking moron. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting a little salty. I apologize. Anyway, so if your allies start screaming at you and you want to help defend against the double push, your first priority, your absolute first priority, should be ground units, specifically rebuilding the screen of infantry and the tank base of fire. If you do not have either of those aspects, you will likely lose. So you need to make absolutely sure that you can at least contest whatever double push is happening with tanks and infantry. Now, that's only if you want to defend against the double push. Your other option is instead to push on the side which you mainly deploy at. Because here's the thing, right? You guys have equal starting points. If the enemy has completely invested heavily into double pushing your ally, chances are they have basically nothing across the rest of the map. And if you realize this, you then know that you have almost free reign to try and take advanced positions and then consolidate them. Like, for example, let's assume Red double pushed India, and this guy went into India is like start screaming about like, help me, please, I'm getting double pushed. Oh god, my guys are dying, etc., etc. What this guy should realize is that, okay, so it looks like there's like 1,600 points or something like worth of stuff in here. That means there's basically nothing in Echo and Hotel. That means I could basically just drive everything I have up into this forward area, like lock it down with ATGMs and recon stuff, and then like take my time in trying to help my ally in India. Because even if he gets pushed out of India, look how much map control he has compared to the enemy. Like, sure, but the enemy might have Bravo in India, but I've almost completely lost Echo, lost Hotel, probably have lost Delta, and now all Blue has to do is just defend these breaches, defend the ball stack of this dick forest, and you're golden. No big deal. You can pretty much win that way. So, again, to recap this overly long-winded rant about what to do when your ally is getting double pushed, either send ground units to help stem the tide and potentially push back after you've exhausted the brunt of the enemy's attack, or go on the offensive yourself along different axes that you believe are weak. Now, with that little spiel on the way, let's get into this actual game. So on blue side, we have Bob the Sesquipedalian playing... No, sorry, this is Jerb the Gerpson playing Eurocore, and Bob the Sesquipedalian playing NORAD. And on red side, we have Main's Help, which is Autismo 90, playing Eastern Bloc, I believe, while we have Godzi on the other side, also playing Eastern Bloc. No, actually, I believe Autismo was playing USSR, WD-43. So, while they're deploying their units, let me talk a little bit about the specific meta of this map, right? So, from blue side, there are a couple of offensive options here in the early game. One popular one is to helo drop into Echo. It's really just cheesy, sort of cancerous strat, but it's powerful, and you have to be able to account for the fact that an Echo drop is something that the blue side can do to red side. Another is to invest heavily into Hotel, seize Hotel, then use this forest line to base your fire support and start walking your infantry into Echo to contest and neutralize it. Then you can start pushing from Lima as well to pincer this forest and then potentially push into the ball sack. Once you have here, get some blocking infantry here and then potentially push into Delta. Although Delta only really gets pushed out if the enemy doesn't know how to defend Echo properly or is like incompetent or whatever. Typically what happens is that you get a small foothold of an Echo, but are just stuck grinding in this part of the map for a long time, which is not exactly the worst thing, because if you get like an armored CV in here, at the very least you can neutralize Echo. Something that is very atypical but can happen is actually a push into Bravo, into here, because one thing that many people don't realize about this map is that if blue side holds Bravo, all the reinforcements from this side are cut off because they have to use this road. The pathing basically guarantees that they will not use any of the other roads. They will always go down this road. So if blue side takes control of this city, it's basically game, because there's almost nothing red can really do to try and like push across this push up this little hill of murder. It's just not feasible. So from the other side, there are slightly less options available, and this is partially why I believe that this side is the weaker side on 2v2 Patty, but they can still push into Hotel. Typically, Hotel is the site of really, really big tank battles. It's one of the quintessential open ground terrain zones, which means stuff like super heavies, planes, attack helicopters, especially longbows and stuff like that. They tend to be really, really predominant Hotel. Typically, if someone goes into Hotel and they like don't smoke off anything, and the opponent does smoke off all of their stuff, you know that Hotel is basically the person who hasn't been using smoke has lost Hotel, because they clearly don't know what they're doing. From here, it's not really advisable to push into Lima, just because, not at the start at least, just because what winds up happening is that you overextend your forces, because like, okay, you get into here, but the enemy can get into here, they get into here, they probably have this town, and suddenly you've put yourself in a concave situation, and then this forest is perfectly sized for LRMs, Uraguns, Buratinos, bombing strikes, you name it. So all they'll do is just like stun lock you to death, and then just push in infantry, and then you've been wiped, and they'll probably push you into Echo. And unlike Lima, it's much more difficult for you to push back into Echo. From red side, it's also relatively easier for them to push into India, because this forest area makes it easy to get infantry into here and then start making that short hop across into this town area with tanks providing base of fire and stuff. So yeah, that's a short rundown of how this map is generally played. Let's get into the actual map now. All right, so looks like Bob is going a little bit manpad heavy, but otherwise fairly decent setup. I believe what he does is he deploys to Hotel and tries to defend Lima, or I guess tries to push Echo in some weird fashion. Jerb Gerbson, a relatively new player, so I believe his focus is going to be on full defending India. It's fine. I believe that his micro is his like ability to split his attention is inferior, especially since he's driving his CV Jeep away. But in general, a better distribution of forces from this side is like half in India. Like one player goes half in India, half in Lima, the other player goes full into Hotel. Because Hotel is pretty important if you're not trying to go for an Echo push or a Bravo push. From the other side, it looks like pretty standard infantry heavy. Well, actually, it's pretty heavy on tanks as well. Anyway, heavy push likely into India. And from this side, we have Godzi mainly going into Echo with token forces going into Hotel, which is understandable considering he's playing Eastern Bloc. The only issue with that is that he can very easily get blown out by Recon Bradley. So he has to be very careful about how he uses his stuff. He has to be able to use his smoke, which, I mean, good, he has a mortar, so at least he has that. Wait, what? Oh, he has 2. Okay, that explains it. To use smoke to try and zone out the Bradleys, but even then, it's not favored for the Eastern Bloc player. Anyway, one thing that happened here is that there's an individual so-called got wrecked by all these A helos. It's understandable. One thing that actually could have helped in this situation, actually, though, is landing the so-called. Although, actually, might not have helped that much because it might have opened it up to rocket pods from the Panther. So I don't know. It's just at the very least, something like a low hover, maybe behind this area, would have been able to keep it alive a little longer to start slinging more missiles. Alright, so let's drop into Delta. Sorry, Echo. Drop into Echo. Yeah, Bob has identified heavy push into India, which is pretty standard from this side. Oh no, it does. It actually does look like it's double Eastern Bloc. Okay. Not sure what the fuck is going on over here, but Godzi is completely blundering away his opener right now. Okay. Strange. Yeah, and when Wilk getting blown up by the Recon Bradley. Oh, and then Night Hawk comes and there's nothing in the area that could deal with that, so yeah. I don't know what's going on here. Did his units get stuck? Did he forget about these? That is something you can't afford to do. Okay, good. He's finally getting his stuff there, but honestly, that probably cost him the match because look at Bob's position right now. He has so much territory. He has an M1A2 in Echo. Like oh, this is terrible for Red Side. Okay, that actually probably just cost Red Side the match right there. Looks like Jerb is having some trouble defending India. Oh, and one thing. If you have a town sector like this, it's actually a really bad idea to occupy all of the sectors. And you're about to see immediately why. Bombs fall, bombs hit. Yeah. So, here's the reason why having all of the sectors in a small town like this occupied is a terrible idea. It means that your infantry can't dodge between buildings. Right? And if they can't dodge, all they have to do is take a shot. They have to take that bombing run. So instead of potentially having like a 2-stack and a single stack and then potentially trying to micro the 2-stack away or like out of the path of the bombing strike, you have nowhere to go. So yeah, that's why you actually don't want to occupy all the sectors of a town sector if you can help it, just because it makes it a lot harder for you to actually dodge indirect fire. Over here, fire and computer reset, that's a nice crit. At least he's smoking it off and pulling them back though. But yeah, at this point, Godzi just doesn't seem to be able to keep up. I'm not entirely sure what he's doing right now because, oh wow. Yeah, at this point, it's Bob went for the throw, as he should have, and now Godzi is just completely on the back foot. He's probably going to get blown out entirely here. So I think on a meta level, the deployment of players for the red side was a mistake. I believe Autismo has more experience than Godzi, which means that Autismo should have been the one spread out a little bit more, as opposed to focusing mostly on India, because generally speaking, you want to give the better player the more important responsibilities, and in this case, the more important responsibility is not losing the rest of the fucking map, right? Sure, Autismo is able to make good headway into India versus Jerb, but the thing is, even though Jerb is the less experienced player, even if he does get blown out of India, it doesn't matter because his ally has the control of the rest of the map. Now I say that, but there's a really, really big gap here, and I'm not sure if either player realizes that yet. I don't believe that Red Side takes advantage of this gap, but well, let's just say maybe they should have. Buys and mortars, terrible. I still don't understand why fucking Bob takes these. They're just bad. It's like you pay a tax for wheels and extra armor, but you first of all it has 0 top armor anyway, and second of all you get like 3/5 of the ammo capacity as other 3HE mortars for NORAD, so it's like why the wheels don't matter. Okay, yeah, this is kind of what I was. Yeah, so yeah, you can see that Bob doing a bunch of bombing tracks and stuff, but as I said, like, doesn't really matter that much if the ground forces are not there. And I guess one big problem that, okay, that's good. And I was about to say one big problem that Jerb is having right now is that he has no fire support for his infantry, so all of his stuff is just going to get mulched by the Wilks and stuff. Although I do believe that Bob's strike killed like the Moderna and a Wilk, which is really, really good actually because it relieves a ton of pressure from this side. But yeah, see now his Torty hasn't been able to do anything, and all this stuff it's cut off from the Torty, so it really won't be able to do much versus stuff like CVs and stuff. And yeah, like just don't bunch up your infantry like that. Don't and if you see a bomber coming like that, first of all, it's it's a bad idea to play like this for too long because what you wind up doing is that you won't be able to see bombers until their bombs are almost on top of you, and at that point it's way too late to dodge. You want to try and play zoomed out a little bit like this just so that you have a little bit more situational awareness. If you need to like really, really precisely micro unit, you can zoom in very quickly and then order it, but then zoom out immediately after because you want to keep as much situational awareness as you possibly can. Yeah, Jerb just panicking really. Um, Not making good use of his fire support, his tanks, just kind of isolating his infantry from his base of fire and just getting destroyed as a result. Panthers getting intercepted by the LSTR, losing 2 of them for basically no reason. That's 120 points down the drain. Yeah, just lots of panic. But again, in terms of the grand scheme of things, like yeah, he's not trading well in India, but he's holding. And when compared to the rest of the map, that's all he really needs to do. It's a good thing that Bob recognized the gap in these lines and sent a Ranger squad down there. So that's good. And yeah, at this point, the game's over. But yeah, Godzi's blunder of not microing his opener units into Echo for like 5 minutes. Yeah, can't afford to do stuff like that. Godzi not turning off the. Well, okay, he's doing full turns off, which is I guess fine. Not optimal, but still fine. Yeah, that's there's nothing that Godzi can do from this position besides just feed. And yeah, so yeah, that kill death pretty much says it all. Anyway, this has been Tyrnek with another Studies in Salt. Signing off.